So, imagine your own mind for a second.
Uh-huh.
Like all your past selves, your coping mechanisms, your emotional baggage, the memories you actively try to hide and the ones you desperately cling to.
Right, the heavy stuff.
Exactly. And usually when we are asked to visualize this kind of internal landscape, we default to something really clinical.
Yeah, we picture a standard therapy session.
Right. A comfortable couch, maybe, like a box of tissues on a glass table.
Some inoffensive abstract art on a white wall.
Yeah. Or if we're thinking more analytically, we picture a filing cabinet, a sterile, perfectly organized room where every single memory has a neatly labeled folder.
We gravitate toward those metaphors of cleanliness and order. I mean, because they offer us an illusion of control.
Oh, for sure.
Because human psychology is inherently messy, right?
Yeah.
And dealing with our own subconscious is terrifying. So we want to believe our internal world is this pristine, well-lit archive.
We really do.
We want to believe that if we just find the right cognitive behavioral tool, we can sweep the floors, lock the bad memories in a vault, and just operate at peak efficiency.
But then you step into the world of the source materials we are unpacking today for this deep dive, and that pristine archive is just completely violently overwritten.
Oh, yeah. It's obliterated.
We are not looking at a sterile office. We are looking at a gritty, high-tech, 90s cyberpunk role-playing game.
Which is such a wild pivot.
It is, and most jarring part, it's not set in some sleek, neon-drenched Tokyo metropolis. The landscape of the mind we are exploring today is a literal Florida swamp.
Yeah, it is the absolute physical manifestation of psychological muddy waters.
Exactly.
And frankly, the deeper we go into these documents, the more convinced I am that this is one of the most compelling, structurally sound frameworks for understanding human consciousness that we have ever reviewed. I mean, it rejects the sterile archive entirely.
So let's talk about the materials themselves. We are looking at a fascinating set of system design documents and lore omnibuses.
Very dense stuff.
Yes, specifically, we are diving into files labeled geminstructions.md and loreomnibus.md. And on the surface, they detail the architecture of something called the Clockwork Necronomicon.
Which is an incredible name.
Right. It is described as a central database that manages the entire life cycle of a single operator. An individual referred to in the text as Uncle Entity or James Hood.
And what's fascinating here is the disguise. The brilliance of these documents lies in how they present themselves.
How do you mean?
Well, if you just skim them, they read exactly like technical specifications for a complex piece of software.
Yeah, lots of jargon.
Right. They use terminology from computer science, networking, system administration. But beneath that technical vocabulary, they're actually describing the profoundly messy, emotional, and evolutionary process of a human being processing trauma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, navigating the aging process and trying to survive interpersonal relationships.
And that is our mission for today. We are going to unpack this incredibly dense, highly structured, metaphorical universe.
It's going to be a journey.
Because by exploring how this specific system, quote unquote, handles its internal chaos, its past versions, and its network connections to other people, you might just find a completely new way to debug your own internal operating system.
I love that framing.
Reading through these documents felt exactly like finding a forgotten, dusty Dungeons & Dragons sourcebook in the back of a thrift store, only to open it up and realize it actually describes the architecture of a human soul.
Yeah, it provides a really rigorous vocabulary for concepts that are usually far too abstract to discuss effectively.
Right.
It takes the invisible, crushing weight of psychological baggage and gives it a physical, functional form.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can meet the people inside the system, the different versions of the self running concurrently, we need to understand the physical space they inhabit.
The server room, so to speak.
Exactly. Every piece of software needs a server room. Every system needs a physical location to exist in. And this one is called the analog wasteland, or my personal favorite designation in the text, the Foreverglades.
The Foreverglades. Even the nomenclature is incredibly deliberate there.
This is so evocative.
It implies a kind of inescapable, overgrown permanence. You can't just pave over the Foreverglades.
Right.
And this environment is generated by what the documents call the Atlas architecture. Specifically, it relies on a piece of foundational logic called the atlasengen.py script.
Let's pause right there because atlasengen.py sounds like a literal Python script you'd find on GitHub.
Yeah, it really does.
What does a sorting engine actually do in this context? If we map a piece of code to a human brain, What is this engine doing?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at what a sorting algorithm does in standard computer science.
Okay.
A basic Python script might be written to ingest a massive chaotic data set, say a spreadsheet with 50,000 rows of raw customer data, and it sorts it.
Right, it organizes the mess.
Exactly. It evaluates the incoming data against a set of rules and places it into the correct bins. It brings order to chaos. Now apply that to the human mind.
So the mind is constantly ingesting raw reality. Visual stimuli, snippets of conversation, the stress of a deadline, the smell of rain.
A sudden pang of unexplainable grief.
Yeah, exactly.
The Atlassian.py in this lore represents the foundational cognitive mechanism that takes all of that raw, unfiltered, chaotic daily life and attempts to sort it into an internal landscape.
Okay, I see.
It is the subconscious processor deciding what becomes a core memory, what gets repressed, what gets flagged as an immediate threat, and what gets discarded as background noise.
Wow.
But what's crucial here is the result of that sorting. The engine doesn't build a neat spreadsheet. It builds a cyber swamp.
And the aesthetic rules for that swamp are incredibly vivid and honestly incredibly strict. The theme is explicitly defined as Florida Cyber Swamp meets 90s tech scavenger.
Such a specific vibe.
Very specific. It is built from the salvaged, decaying ruins of what the text refers to as efficiency traps. We are talking about rusted server racks that are literally being choked by Spanish moss. Mangrove roots are described as being tangled up with thick, buried fiber optic cables.
And consider the lighting, right? And the atmosphere.
Oh yeah, the lighting is intense.
The visual guidelines mandate heavy, oppressive shadows. These shadows are broken only by the harsh, abrasive glare of CRT monitors, or like the sudden arsing of raw electricity.
Or those deeply bruised purple and dark blue twilight skies you only see in Florida right before a massive thunderstorm.
Exactly.
I can almost smell it. It's humid, heavy with ozone mixed with swamp mud. And looming over all of this are these towering, rusted corporate monuments. The text specifically mentions a decaying CITGO sign rising out of the muck.
Yes.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. From an IT perspective, this sounds like a total nightmare.
Oh, 100%.
Why would an advanced, highly structured framework like the Clockwork Necronomicon choose to run its core processes in a humid, rusted swamp? I mean, heat and humidity fry servers.
Right.
If this is supposed to be a functional mind, why design it to look like a post-apocalyptic junkyard?
Well, it would absolutely be an IT nightmare if the goal of the system was pure, unfeeling efficiency.
Okay.
But this system is not running a corporate logistics database. It is running a human mind. The text explicitly notes that this space is optimized for survival, observation, and data preservation, not aesthetics.
Ah, I see.
That decaying CITGO sign you mentioned, that
Yeah.
is the perfect symbol of an efficiency trap.
How so? What makes a gas station sign an efficiency trap?
Think about what corporate hustle culture demands of us.
Constant productivity.
Exactly. It demands constant forward motion, endless productivity, a sleek, frictionless existence where everything is optimized for maximum output.
Right.
The CITGO sign represents the mind's past attempts to conform to that standard. The system tried to be a corporate machine, but pure efficiency is fatal to the human soul.
Oh, wow. That's profound.
You cannot optimize grief. You cannot put joy in a spreadsheet. So the corporate mindset collapsed, and nature, the messy, organic reality of human emotion, reclaimed it. The swamp grew over the server racks.
Okay, so the swamp isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of survival.
Precisely. I mean, biologically speaking, a swamp is actually one of the most productive, resilient ecosystems on the planet.
Right, it filters toxin.
Yes. It sustains an incredible density of life. The environment is messy because human survival is inherently messy.
That makes the props mandated in the scenes make so much more sense. The documents say the Foreverglades must be cluttered with obsolete physical media.
Cassette tapes.
Yeah, cassette tapes, thick instructional manuals, tangled CT5 cables, massive rusted pipes, and salvaged mechanical keyboards.
Right.
When I first read that, I thought, okay, the system is hoarding, it's refusing to let go of the past. But the documentation specifically calls these items structural dampers.
This is one of the most brilliant psychological metaphors in the entire lore.
Tell me about it.
In physical engineering, a structural damper is a device installed in large structures, like skyscrapers or bridges. Its purpose is to absorb kinetic energy.
Like during an earthquake.
Exactly. When an earthquake hits or high winds batter a building, the damper absorbs the shock, so the building doesn't vibrate itself to pieces and collapse.
So if the building is the mind, what represents the earthquake?
A new trauma, a sudden high-stress event, a catastrophic failure in a relationship.
Huh.
When the system is put under immense load, it threatens to shake the architecture apart.
And you're saying that clinging to old memories, old media, and nostalgia, it's not just a quirky personality trait. It is a structural necessity to keep the human system from crashing during an emotional earthquake.
That is exactly what the text is arguing. The obsolete props act as legacy code.
Legacy code. Wow.
Yeah, when your psychological system is under extreme duress, it does not rely on the newest, shiniest update to save itself. It falls back on the heavily tested, deeply ingrained, rusted routines and memories that it knows will work.
So the tactile feedback of a mechanical keyboard or the familiar hiss of a 90s cassette tape.
These are physical manifestations of psychological grounding techniques. They provide friction and weight to a mind that is spinning out of control. They dampen the shock waves.
Think about your own brain for a second, right? Is your inner world a sterile, minimalist Apple store?
Probably not.
Definitely not. Or is it a cluttered garage full of old mixtapes, half-remembered conversations, and tangled emotional charging cables?
Exactly. We build our psychological fortresses out of the scrap metal of our past.
And knowing that those tangled cables are actually load-bearing structures is incredibly validating.
It recontextualizes our baggage as essential infrastructure.
Which transitions us perfectly into the inhabitants of this infrastructure, because the Uncle Entity system doesn't feature a single unified protagonist wandering through the swamp.
Right, there isn't just one guy.
No, the core identity is broken down into the three distinct concurrent versions of the self. We aren't just who we are today. The system posits that we are every age we've ever been, and all those versions are active and interacting in real time.
This is where the lore moves beyond environmental metaphor and into a profound exploration of developmental psychology.
Yeah.
Most people view their lives as a single line, right? You are a child, then you replace the child to become a teenager, then you replace the teenager to become an adult.
Like upgrading a phone.
Exactly. But the Clockwork Necronomicon argues that the self is a stack of modules. You don't replace the previous versions, you just install new software on top of them, but the old programs are still running in the background.
So let's look at the foundational code. Module V1 prime, also known as the glitch.
The glitch.
This represents the young self, ages 11 to 13. And his narrative origin is deeply telling. The lore states he was born from a linguistic glitch, a mishearing of the phrase anti/unci.
Yeah, a system error that became a core feature of the identity.
Right?
It asks a really powerful question. How many of us have foundational aspects of our adult personality built on a simple misunderstanding from childhood?
Probably more than we'd like to admit.
Right. A nickname that stuck, a misheard lyric, a mistaken assumption about how the adult world operates that we just absorbed and built an entire psychological framework around.
It's incredibly common, and V1 prime embodies the raw, uncontained energy of that era. His operating system state is defined as asynchronous execution/overclocked.
Overclocked.
He is driven by what the text calls high activation energy.
Overclocked is the perfect term there. In computing, overclocking a processor means forcing it to operate faster than the manufacturer intended.
Right, to get more power.
Yeah, it yields higher performance, but it generates massive amounts of heat and risks permanent damage to the hardware.
And visually, V1 is the definition of heat and speed. He is completely hyperactive. He has jagged, spiky electric blue hair.
Very anime.
Very anime. He wears oversized, thick-rimmed black glasses, which the documentation explicitly calls the lens through which UNC logic is processed.
Right.
He is lanky, and he literally emits jagged, light blue electrical sparks into the air around him.
And notice, the primary artifact associated with him, the UNC board.
Oh, yeah, the hoverboarder.
Right. It is described as a translucent blue data deck hoverboard that rides on a cushion of blue lightning. But the lore notes a critical flaw. It suffers from polymorphic glitches.
Polymorphic meaning it changes shape.
Yes. In coding, polymorphism allows a function or an object to take on multiple forms, depending on the context. The hoverboard randomly glitches into floating servers or 8-bit bounding boxes. It cannot hold a rigid, stable form.
Wow.
This represents the nature of a child's imagination, but also the nature of an early trauma response.
Oh, that makes sense.
It shifts rapidly. A child's anxiety might look like hyperactivity one moment and complete withdrawal the next. The system hasn't locked into a stable coping mechanism yet.
His stated philosophy is, gravity is just a suggestion when you're overclocked.
I love that.
It's all about high voltage discovery and breaking boundaries. But beneath that energetic exterior, there is a truly heartbreaking note embedded in his lore file.
Yeah, this part is heavy.
The document states, he is fundamentally oblivious to his own brokenness. He doesn't know why he's different. He just knows the air feels thicker for him than it does for everyone else.
The air feels thicker.
Yeah.
It is difficult to overstate how poignant that phrase is.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures the lived experience of a neurodivergent child, or a child dealing with early unprocessed trauma, long before they are given the clinical vocabulary to understand what they are experiencing.
Right. They don't know what a panic attack is. They don't know what sensory overload is.
Exactly. They don't look around and say, my system architecture is currently experiencing a memory leak.
Right.
They just assume that moving through the world is supposed to be this exhausting. They assume everyone else is also pushing through thick, heavy air, and they just assume they are personally failing because it looks so much easier for the other kids.
And the way V1 stores his memories is fascinating, too. The text mentions his legacy code and specifies that V1 remembers the Monday Night Wars, the massive pro wrestling boom in the late 90s, and his mom's circuit board repairs as real-time system events, not memories.
This is a crucial distinction.
I want to dig into that. Aren't all memories technically just past system events?
For a fully integrated adult, yes. If you or I recall something we did at age 12, we are accessing a file. We have temporal distance.
We know it's in the past.
Right, we know we are looking at an archive of something that is over. But for a highly activated module like V1, or for a mind dealing with PTSD, there is no temporal distance.
The processor is actively executing the code right now.
Precisely. To V1, it is not a memory of his mom fixing the circuit board. She is actively soldering it in his mind, drawing current from the power supply at this exact moment.
Wow.
He is actively watching the Monday Night Wars. The emotional load of those events is currently occupying active RAM.
That's exhausting to even think about.
It highlights how childhood fixations and early fears don't just fade away into the archive. They become the foundational logic gates through which the adult brain must parse all new incoming information.
Which brings us to the module that actually has to deal with that adult reality. Module V2, Admin.
The patch.
Also known as the patch, right? This represents the middle-aged self. His designated role is the environment optimizer of Bartertown.
Bartertown.
The name Bartertown alone implies he is trying to build a functional trading society out of wasteland scrap.
Right, if V1 is the raw, uncontained electrical energy, V2 is the desperate, rigid attempt to manage and survive that energy.
Yeah.
His OS state is still listed as asynchronous execution, but he is no longer overclocked. He is the system admin.
I know we touched on asynchronous execution earlier, but let's break it down further. Why does the admin have to operate asynchronously?
So, in a synchronous computer program, tasks are completed in order. Task A finishes entirely before task B begins. You can't start rendering the video until the audio is processed.
Right.
But an asynchronous system allows a program to initiate a task, let it run in the background, and immediately move on to start another task without waiting. It juggles multiple independent streams of operations simultaneously.
Like a parent cooking dinner while helping with math homework and mentally drafting an email to their boss.
That is the essence of adulthood.
Literally.
V2 admin is responsible for keeping the entire server farm online. He is executing the maintain career trajectory script, while the process the argument with my spouse's script runs in the background, while the ensure V1 prime doesn't short-circuit the power grid script is constantly monitored.
It is an incredibly high-load state of being.
Oh, incredible.
And you see that load in his visual design. The shift from V1 to V2 is drastic.
It's night and day.
Yeah. V2 has salt and pepper dreadlocks tied back in a practical tactical tie, no more spiky blue hair. He wears a long, heavily weathered leather duster, heavy combat boots, and a bandolier for cables.
Very utilitarian.
Very. He doesn't have a glitching hoverboard. He interacts with the world via a handheld, ruggedized green projection tablet. And most notably, he has a cybernetic right arm with exposed, glowing green and orange circuitry.
I want to focus on that cybernetic arm, actually, because it is a vital symbol in the architecture.
I have a question about that. Usually in sci-fi, a cybernetic arm is an upgrade.
Right.
It makes you stronger, faster, you punch through walls with it. But you're suggesting it represents something heavier.
It is an upgrade, but one born of absolute necessity, not luxury.
Right.
The cybernetic arm represents the tools, the boundaries, and the coping mechanisms we forcefully bolt onto ourselves in order to survive the demands of adulthood.
Wow.
It makes him capable, yes, but it is heavy. And the text notes the circuitry is exposed.
Right, which implies vulnerability.
Exactly. It means the effort it takes to keep that arm functioning, the daily effort required to maintain those coping mechanisms, is visible and requires constant maintenance. V2 is quite literally carrying the weight of the system on that arm.
His philosophy really struck me. It might be the core of modern therapeutic practice. He says, don't just fix the bug. Optimize the environment so the bug can't survive.
It marks a massive paradigm shift in the internal evolution of the system. It is the shift from internal blame to external architecture.
Right, because V1 just thinks he's broken. V1 thinks the air is thick because he is defective.
Exactly. When we are young, we internalize our struggles.
Mm.
We believe we are the glitch.
Yeah.
When an individual reaches the psychological maturity of the V2 admin stage, they realize that trying to fix themselves down to the root code is often an exercise in futility.
You can't just delete V1.
No, you cannot delete V1. He is hard-coded,
Yeah.
so instead the admin focuses on the environment. He changes the parameters of the Foreverglades.
Okay.
He builds boundaries.
Yeah.
He cuts out toxic network connections. He organizes his external world, his barter town, so that the internal glitches are no longer constantly triggered by environmental hazards.
He avoids the efficiency trap.
Right.
He stops trying to be perfect and just focuses on system integrity. He is a rugged, tired guy just trying to keep the servers from catching fire.
Just trying to keep the lights on.
Exactly. But the evolutionary path doesn't stop there. Managing the heat is not the final form. That brings us to Module E3, Root, the Sage, the old self.
V3 represents a state the documents call pathological homeostasis. He has achieved root access.
For those unfamiliar with Unix or Linux systems, what does root access mean?
So root is the ultimate superuser. An admin can manage files, install programs, and keep the system running, but root has access to the foundational kernel of the operating system itself.
Wow.
Root can rewrite the laws of physics within the system. V3 is no longer just managing the environment. He understands the fundamental code of reality itself.
The documentation playfully describes him as a part-time stand-up philosopher.
Which is great.
Visually, he is majestic. He has long, flowing white hair and a magnificent beard. He wears royal purple robes, but they are detailed with gold circuit board embroidery along the hems.
Linking the mystical with the digital.
Right. And his physics operate on completely different rules. He doesn't have an electric aura like V1, and he doesn't need a heavy cybernetic arm like V2. Instead, he has translucent polyhedral dice, D20s, D12s, D8s, floating in a slow cosmic orbit around him.
Like tabletop gaming dice?
Exactly. And he wields the staff of D20s topped with a glowing violet orb. Let's talk about the dice.
The transition from the rigid tactical data tablet of V2 to the random probability dice of V3 is profoundly telling regarding his psychological state.
How so?
Well, V2 needs his tablet because he is desperately trying to control everything. He needs hard data to optimize his survival.
Right.
V3 has lived long enough to know that ultimate control is an illusion.
So the dice represent chance.
They represent the acceptance of chance, probability, and the sheer whimsy of the universe. When you roll a D20 in a tabletop game, you are submitting to fate.
You literally let the dice decide.
Exactly. V3 accepts that sometimes you do everything right, you optimize your environment perfectly, and you still roll a critical failure. And no amount of admin management can stop it.
His philosophy reflects that piece. He says, the system doesn't just break, it evolves. Welcome to the debugging phase.
It is the ultimate acceptance of the self. The lore notes that V3 operates on the storyteller layer. He is the one who has seen every layer of the system stack and realizes that all the struggles, the trauma, the system audits of V1 and V2 were just necessary arcs in a much larger narrative.
He sees the big picture.
Right. He has reached an internal balance that cannot be shaken by external metrics of success or failure.
Now, here is where the architecture gets really fascinating. The documentation enforces a strict rule for rendering these characters visually, something it calls the Deadpool effect.
The Deadpool effect.
Yes, the rule mandates that dialogue bubbles must strictly match the visual styles of the speaker to denote who is in control of the narrative.
The aesthetic boundaries are non-negotiable.
Very strict. V1 Prime's dialogue is contained in jagged, shattered borders with an electric blue outline and a scratchy, high-velocity font.
Right.
V2 admin speaks within sharp, rectangular borders with a CRT green outline and monospace terminal font, often starting his sentences with a command prompt, like C.
Very retro tech.
Yeah. And V3 Root's speech is housed in cloudy, nebulous borders with purple and gold outlines utilizing an elegant serif font.
Right.
Now, let me push back on this for a second. Is it really healthy to compartmentalize yourself this strictly?
It's a fair question.
Giving your inner child a jagged blue font and your adult self a green terminal font, doesn't that lead to a fragmented personality? Aren't we supposed to strive to be a unified, cohesive whole?
That is the traditional mid-century view of psychological integration, yes.
Yeah.
We are taught to desire a smooth, unbroken, singular narrative of the self.
Right.
But the Clockwork Necronomicon proposes a different model, one that actually aligns very closely with modern therapeutic frameworks like internal family systems or IFS.
Oh, IFS.
It argues that a forced artificial unity is actually dangerous
Why is unity dangerous?
because it creates massive cognitive dissonance. If you rigidly believe you are just one unified rational adult, what happens when you suddenly throw a mental temper tantrum because someone criticized your work?
You feel terrible.
Exactly. Or you panic over a minor inconvenience. You feel immense shame because you think, I am a 40-year-old adult. I shouldn't be reacting like a terrified child.
You blame your whole identity.
Right. You look at the air and say, my entire operating system is garbage. But if you apply the Deadpool effect, if you are mindful enough to visualize that sudden spike of panic in a jagged electric blue font, you instantly recognize what is happening.
Oh.
You realize, oh, my whole system isn't broken. V1 Prime has just taken over the main thread. The traumatized 11-year-old has grabbed the steering wheel.
Wow. It creates distance. It forces you to identify the origin of the thought.
It replaces paralyzing shame with system curiosity.
Yeah.
It prevents system overlap. The rule states the admin cannot speak in jagged blue. The prime cannot speak in elegant purple.
Right.
It is a highly advanced method of sorting the internal chorus. It acknowledges that even while the admin is trying to build a stable life in Bartertown, the prime is still running in the background, occasionally sparking electricity and demanding attention.
The system doesn't try to delete the child. It just ensures he has his own distinct dialogue bubble so the admin knows who is talking. This raises such an important question for you, the listener, as you go through your day. Which font are your daily thoughts written in?
That's a great way to think about it.
When you get angry at a coworker, are you running that reaction from the measured tactical terminal of the stress admin? Or are you running a legacy script in the jagged blue font of an overclocked child?
Probably the child.
Yeah, often it is. Have you found moments in your life where you can step back and speak in the nebulous purple of the root? It is a remarkably powerful visualization tool.
And it highlights the core reality of the Foreverglades.
Yeah.
These aren't sequential stages where one gracefully exits stage left so the next can enter. They are concurrent.
They're all there.
They all live in the swamp at the same time. The admin is actively carrying the weight, managing the environment, precisely so that the root can philosophize and the prime can occasionally ride the lightning without burning the whole forest down.
Okay, so we have exhaustively mapped out the internal architecture. The system is incredibly complex, just dealing with its own internal trinity.
It's a lot to manage.
But a system does not exist in a vacuum. A mind does not exist in isolation. It has to interface with outside users. It has an external network.
Right. Other people.
So how does this Clockwork Necronomicon handle other people? How does it process external entities logging into the Foreverglades?
This brings us to the introduction of modules V6 and V7. These modules represent external interactions, and examining them completely shifts our paradigm from internal management to external observation and the inevitable friction of human relationships.
Let's start with V6, the Traveler, also known in the kernel as Jody Gates.
Jody Gates.
The documentation makes it clear that V6 represents a totally different architectural logic interacting with our core system. V6 renders in various wildly different forms depending on the interaction.
Right.
Sometimes the Traveler appears as a space trucker in a utilitarian cockpit, sometimes as a techno-mage with a cybernetic skeletal arm and a glowing blue super-based chest reactor. Other times as a cloud architect floating on impossibly high islands with dragons circling in the distance.
The sheer visual variety of V6 indicates a highly fluid, adaptable external presence.
Yeah.
This is someone who refuses to adhere to the rusted, grounded reality of the analog wasteland.
I want to focus on that super-based chest reactor detail. Super-base is a real-world open-source backend as a service, right? Like it manages databases.
Yes.
If the Traveler has their own backend database reactor in their chest, what does that imply psychologically?
It implies they generate their own systemic gravity. They aren't relying on Uncle entities at lansingin.py to sort their reality. They bring their own server, their own rules, their own power source into the swamp.
Oh, wow.
And we see this codified in the defining rule for V6, which the lore calls the Adam Savage Protocol.
Named after the Mythbusters host. The protocol states, I reject your reality and substitute my own.
This is a flawless metaphor for encountering a highly charismatic, dominant, or simply deeply interwoven external personality.
Explain that a bit more.
Think about it. The Uncle entity system is rigidly defined. Everything is heavily documented, tracked, and meticulously sorted into the swamp by the admin.
It's heavy.
It's a heavy, oppressive reality. But then the traveler arrives, logs into the system, and the rules temporarily bend.
The traveler refuses to sit in the gloomy cyber swamp and instead imposes their floating islands or their spaceship cockpit onto the local environment.
It demonstrates how profound relationships can temporarily override our internal programming.
Sometimes that's a bad thing, right?
Sure, sometimes this is negative. We lose ourselves in someone else's dominant reality.
Yeah.
But often, it is vital for survival.
Oh, like a friend pulling you out of a funk.
Exactly. It's the friend who finds you stuck in a depressive V2 admin loop of endless stress, refuses to acknowledge the gloom of your swamp, and drags you out on an adventure.
Right.
They substitute their high-energy, high-altitude reality for your low-energy one. We adopt the reality of the people we allow deep access into our system.
They overwrite the local files, even if just for a day.
Yeah.
But while V6 represents active interference and reality alteration, V7 represents something much more subtle, much more passive, and honestly, I think much more profound. V7 is Cassie the Duck.
The Observer.
Right, the Observer.
Cassie is an absolutely crucial addition to the system kernel. Her official designations are the Sovereign Observer and the Independent Archival Unit.
Her visuals strike a massive contrast to the rusted greens and heavy shadows of the swamp. She is described as a young woman wearing a vibrant yellow trench coat over a white tee, tactical pants, and bright red high-top sneakers.
Very bright, very visible.
She navigates the analog wasteland with ease, balancing nimbly on rusted pipes, and she brings her own specific hardware. She is equipped with a forearm uplink, a heavy-duty telephoto camera and scanner used for data logging, and she carries a physical, weathered notebook clearly labeled private.
Let's examine her OS state. She is listed as read-only memory with aggressive uplink.
What does aggressive uplink mean in a psychological context? In networking, an uplink is how you send data out to the wider internet, right?
Yes. An uplink pushes data from a local device up to the core network. By designating it as an aggressive uplink, the text suggests she is not passively waiting to be told what happened.
Okay.
She is constantly actively pulling data from the environment, scanning the interactions, and forcing them into the permanent archive.
She's taking notes.
She is in stealth observer mode. Unlike the Traveler, she isn't there to change Bartertown or bend its reality. She is there to meticulously document it.
Her philosophy reflects that archival mission. Data doesn't lie, but it depends on the lens. Log the truth before the system overwrites it, which carries a pretty heavy implication.
With that.
It implies that the Uncle entity system might not be a reliable narrator of its own existence.
Most human minds aren't reliable narrators of their own trauma.
Right. The admin system might try to overwrite painful memories or gloss over failures to maintain system integrity, but Cassie is there, balancing on a pipe in the background, aggressively logging the raw, unedited reality.
She is the external witness to your internal life.
But here is the part of her documentation that completely blew my mind. It's a mechanism called the perception filter.
If we connect this to the broader landscape of human empathy, communication, and relationships, this rule is devastatingly accurate. It might be the most important psychological concept in the entire document.
The rule dictates that Cassie views the world through the lens of her own past, her own database. Whenever Cassie is present in a scene with Uncle Entity, or whenever the narrative renders him from her point of view, his appearance must be slightly, deliberately incorrect.
Yes.
He has to be blended with figures from her own memory.
The text gives very specific examples of this visual drift. Through Kathy's lens, V1 Prime might have yellow electrical hair instead of his immutable kernel-defined blue.
Right.
The admin might be missing his heavy cybernetic arm entirely, or he might be wearing a denim duster instead of his weathered leather one. The root might wield a staff topped with standard six-sided dice instead of the D20s.
This is where I initially got confused. The Uncle Entity documents are incredibly strict about his visual canon. If V1 doesn't have blue hair, the internal system audit fails.
The Deadpool effect demands rigid compliance.
Exactly. But when Cassie looks at him, the system allows the error. In fact, it mandates the error. Why? If this is a perfect machine, why allow a user to perceive the data incorrectly?
Because the Clockwork Necronomicon is acknowledging a fundamental, unavoidable truth of interpersonal psychology.
Which is?
No one, no matter how much they love you, no matter how closely they observe you, ever truly sees you exactly as you are.
Wow.
They see you through the filter of their own experiences, their own trauma, their own legacy code.
Oh, man. So let's break that down with an example. Cassie sees V1's hair as yellow instead of blue. Maybe yellow was the color of a jacket someone wore who hurt her deeply in the past.
Yes.
Or conversely, maybe yellow is a color that makes her feel safe. She is projecting her own internal database onto Uncle Entity's external hardware.
Exactly. Her philosophy says, data doesn't lie, but it turns on the lens. The Uncle Entity is outputting blue hair data. He is broadcasting his truth perfectly.
Right.
But Cassie's lens is tinted by her own history.
Yeah.
So the data is ingested and rendered as yellow. And the beauty of this system architecture is that it doesn't fight this reality. It codifies it.
It accepts it.
It accepts that being misunderstood or being perceived slightly incorrectly by the people we care about is not a bug to be patched out. It is an unavoidable feature of network architecture.
Think about how this applies to our daily lives. We spend so much time frustrated, arguing with our partners, our parents, our friends, yelling, "You don't understand me. You aren't seeing the real me. I am outputting blue data."
All the time.
And this document just calmly states, of course they aren't. They can't. Their system simply does not have the codec required to read your specific raw files. They have to transcode you into a format their processor can handle.
And sometimes, in that transcoding process, critical data is lost. They miss the cybernetic arm. They look at you and they miss the incredibly heavy burden you were carrying, not out of malice, but because their own life experience hasn't given them the capacity to recognize that specific type of structural weight.
Right.
Or they misinterpret the whimsy and philosophy of the Roots D20 as the mundane, desperate gamble of a standard six-sided die.
It teaches a profound level of grace in relationships. It means you can stop being angry at people for not seeing your underlying code. You have to allow people their perception filter.
Yes.
You let Cassie see the yellow hair while still holding true to your own internal system canon that the hair is blue. You don't have to change your code to match their filter, but you don't have to attack their filter either.
It is the ultimate compromise between the internal self and the external network.
So let's summarize the load on this server farm right now. We've got an incredibly complex, jagged landscape. We have an overclocked child sparking blue electricity, a weary admin trying to manage the heat of the environment, a cosmic sage rolling probability dice, a reality-rejecting traveler imposing spaceships on the swamp, and an archivist who actively logs everyone slightly wrong because of her own filters.
It's a lot going on.
All of this is running simultaneously on rusted 90-era tech in a humid Florida cyber swamp. The cognitive load on this system must be astronomical. How does the entire thing not just collapse under its own weight? How does it not blue screen of death every single day?
That is the ultimate question of psychological survival.
Okay.
For a system this chaotic that's heavily loaded to remain functional, it cannot rely solely on the admin's environmental management or the Roots' stoic philosophy. It requires hard-coded constants. It requires external grounding and security protocols.
Which brings us to the final section of our deep dive, the uptime guarantee. We find these constants in modules V5 and V4. Let's start with V5, Sentinel, the security module. Her persona is named Rita, and she is designated as the furry node.
A literal cat.
Yes, but a very specific, highly detailed cat. The visual kernel defines her down to the pixel. She is a high-gloss, jet-black domestic shorthair. She has a single white star on her chest, solid tactical black front paws, and white tipped toes on her back paws. She has golden green eyes and a notched left ear indicating a rescue origin.
The detail is amazing.
The system explicitly defines her as a core system requirement for environmental security and emotional stability. She is not a pet, she is infrastructure.
What is deeply interesting about Rita is the temporal logic or the interpretation layer applied to her.
Oh, yeah.
Much like how Cassie's perception filter distorts Uncle Entity, the different internal modules of Uncle Entity perceive Rita differently based entirely on their own current firmware.
The documentation calls this the Sentinel paradox. So, to V1 Prime, the glitchy 11-year-old self, she is rendered visually as an Animaniacs-style 90s cartoon stray.
Right.
He sees her name, relates it to his legacy media intake, and views her as a lonesome lone wolf ally accompanying him on his high-voltage adventures. He projects his own chaotic, imaginative childhood energy onto her.
Which is precisely how children interact with emotional support animals. They anthropomorphize
They
them.
turn them into cartoon companions.
Yes, to share in their isolation, their imaginary worlds, or their play. They don't see the animal, they see a co-conspirator.
Yeah.
But then we shift the perspective to the V2 admin.
Right. To the admin, Rita barely exists as a tangible physical entity. His tactical projection tablet flags her as a literal database error.
An error.
Yeah. When he looks at her, she is blurry, glitching, obscured by floating UI warning boxes. Why? The lore says he hasn't integrated the furry node into his survival environment yet. How can the admin be blind to his own security module?
Because V2 is entirely consumed by the efficiency trap. He is hyper-focused on managing the heat, the stress, and the asynchronous tasks of Bartertown.
He's too busy.
His system is tuned only to recognize threats and resources. He literally cannot process an element of pure emotional support. He views love, comfort, or companionship that does not serve a direct, practical, structural purpose as a system glitch.
That is so sad.
It is. He doesn't know what to do with a cat. A purring cat doesn't compute with his combat boots and his data cables.
He is completely blind to the comfort sitting right in front of him because he's too busy managing the crisis to sit down and pet the cat.
Exactly. It isn't until we reach V3 Root, the sage, that she is seen clearly. The Root sees her perfectly. He knows her true identity as a high-integrity companion. He recognizes that the system doesn't just benefit from her. It requires her for emotional stability.
It suggests that it is only when we achieve a level of pathological homeostasis, when we stop trying to control everything, that we can actually appreciate the simple, grounding presence of a companion.
It's a beautiful micro-narrative about how our capacity to accept comfort evolves over a lifetime.
But while Rita provides essential environmental security, the system requires a much heavier anchor to prevent complete catastrophic failure during major events, and that is V4.
V4 is the cornerstone of the entire architecture.
This is truly the climax of the system design. Module V4, Shield Maiden, the firewall. Her persona is M, the V4.0 Guardian.
She is officially designated as the primary structural damper located at the Green Dragon node, deep within the Foreverglades.
Let's talk about her visuals, because they are striking. She is described as a mid-30s, highly intelligent woman with a sharp gaze. The text says she possesses Gemini dual processing, which is a fantastic way to describe emotional intelligence.
It really is.
She wears practical attire that bridges wasteland survival and high fantasy ritual. She holds two major artifacts that seem completely contradictory. The Green Dragon Grimoire, which is a leather ledger that pulses green like a server node, and the Locked Tarot, which is a biometric deck of cards.
Notice that deliberate blend of cold logic and mysticism. A grimoire, a book of spells that pulses like network hardware. A tarot deck locked by a biometric fingerprint signature.
It's wow.
She operates at the exact intersection of deep spiritual intuition and hard empirical data.
I want to spend some time on that biometric tarot deck. Those are two completely incompatible concepts. Tarot is all about divination, intuition, interpreting ambiguous symbols, and opening yourself up to unseen energies.
Right.
Biometrics is the cold, hard measurement of a human fingerprint or a retina scan. You cannot unlock a mystical, empathetic experience with a fingerprint scanner.
You can if you are the Shield Maiden. Think about what this artifact represents for a person acting as a psychological firewall.
Okay.
A tarot deck is a tool for deep empathy. It's about reading the energy of a situation. Yeah. But people who are highly intuitive, highly empathetic, are incredibly vulnerable to being drained. They absorb everyone else's chaotic energy. They take on the swamp's toxicity.
Right. Highly empathetic people often struggle with having zero boundaries. They let everyone in.
Exactly. But the Shield Maiden has absolute boundaries.
Yeah.
The biometric lock means her empathy is heavily guarded. You cannot access her intuition, her deep emotional reading of your situation, unless you possess the authorized biometric signature. It means she consciously chooses who she extends her energy to. It is weaponized, secured empathy.
And that leads perfectly into a very specific logic rule she has. The lore dictates she is strictly forbidden from ever being depicted near a Ouija board.
This is key.
It is a hard-coded system constraint. My first thought was, okay, she's a hedge witch, so maybe that's just a spooky trope. But in a system design document, everything has a functional purpose. Why ban a Ouija board?
To understand that constraint, we have to think about what a Ouija board actually is, structurally speaking. It is a communication device.
A piece of cardboard with letters on it?
But functionally, in folklore, it represents an open, unverified communication channel. You put your hands on the planchette, you ask a question out into the dark, and you allow whatever random passing entity happens to be nearby to input data into your system.
You have no idea who is talking to you.
From a cybersecurity perspective, that is terrifying.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of it like that.
It is a completely unauthenticated open port on your network. It's the equivalent of leaving your company's main server exposed to the public internet with no firewall, just inviting any random hacker, bot, or piece of malware to drop files directly into your root directory.
That makes total sense.
The Shield Maiden is the firewall. Her entire purpose, her uptime guarantee, is to block malicious, unverified packets of emotional data from crashing the Uncle Entity system. She provides high-integrity protection. A Ouija board is the antithesis of a firewall. It is a vulnerability she simply will not tolerate.
Wow. She is closing all the open ports. She doesn't let toxic data into the Green Dragon node. But her real power, the thing that makes her the linchpin of the system, is her temporal logic.
Yep.
The documentation states she is the only entity exempt from temporal blindness. She exists as a constant. She can communicate across all three versions of the entity, the prime, the admin, and the root, simultaneously in the exact same panel without triggering a temporal paradox.
She sees the whole timeline at once. She doesn't just interact with the tired adult. She sees the glitching child in the cosmic sage residing within him simultaneously.
Let's unpack the visual representation of her firewall mechanism. She emanates an earthy, moss-green aura woven with silver moonlight threads. And this aura literally quiets the static of the other entities.
It is a dampening field.
Yeah, when V1 is sparking jagged blue lightning, and V2 is emitting harsh CRT green terminal logic, and V3 is clouded in thick purple nebula gas, her moss-green aura absorbs and dampens all of it.
She provides a localized zone of zero resistance.
So what does this actually mean for you, the listener? We have this incredibly powerful hedge witch acting as the system's core ground wire. It is like having a master electrician holding the main breaker open with their bare hands while lightning repeatedly strikes the house.
The lore document explicitly lays out the practical application here. It refers to a search your feelings logic sequence. It states, you're not just doing therapy, you're performing a red team/blue team exercise on your life.
Red team, blue team. That is straight cybersecurity terminology.
Exactly.
The red team actively attacks the system to find vulnerabilities and exploit them. The blue team defends the system, patches the holes, and keeps the network online.
Right. The different internal entities, especially the overworked admin and the highly reactive prime, represent the system under load. They are experiencing the red team attacks of daily life. Trauma, stress, financial panic, relationship friction.
Then the Shield Maiden.
The Shield Maiden represents the blue team. She provides the uptime guarantee. She is the sanctuary. In the Foreverglades, her location, the Green Dragon, isn't just a physical space on a map. It is a sanctuary node.
The text explicitly says the Green Dragon is where the admin goes to vent his asynchronous execution heat and where the root goes to verify the weave.
She provides a secure space where the admin can put down his tablet, stop managing the environment for 5 minutes, and just offload his processing heat. She is the literal reason the servers do not melt down during a power surge.
But the absolute most profound philosophical statement in her entire profile, and perhaps the entire document, is her core relational philosophy. Baggage that matches mine.
That phrase is incredible.
Baggage that matches mine. That is so raw. The admin was frantically searching the wasteland for high-integrity collaborators, and he found it in the Shield Maiden. I want to circle back to that phrase, because modern self-help culture tells us the exact opposite.
Oh, completely.
We are constantly bombarded with messaging that says we should seek out completely unproblematic people. Good vibes only. We are told to avoid people with baggage at all costs. But the system architecture is arguing that finding someone with baggage is actually the ultimate goal.
Not just any baggage. Matching baggage.
Matching baggage.
The text is offering a profound structural critique of that shallow good vibes only culture. If you have an incredibly complex high-load internal architecture, if you have an overclocked V1 and an exhausted V2 running simultaneously, processing deep trauma, bringing a sleek, unburdened, good vibes only module into your system isn't going to help.
They wouldn't even have the right ports to connect.
They wouldn't speak the same protocol. An unburdened system would look at your tangled mangrove roots, your rusted server racks, and your glitching hoverboards, and they would run away.
Or they try to fix it.
Or worse, they would try to playfully clean it up and inadvertently delete load-bearing files, crashing your entire system.
Oh, wow.
Successful, deeply rooted relationships aren't about finding someone with a sterile, empty archive. It's about finding someone whose legacy code, whose obsolete hardware, perfectly interfaces with yours.
Her moss green aura dampens his static precisely because her system architecture fundamentally understands his load. She can see the terrified, glitchy child, the exhausted manager, and the cosmic sage all at once, and she doesn't flinch.
She doesn't fail the audit.
She just stands there, biometrics locked, acting as the ground wire, allowing the excess electricity to safely dissipate into the earth.
It is the ultimate functional definition of being truly seen and held by another person. Cassie the Observer logs the reality into the archive, but the Shield Maiden grounds it. She ensures you actually survive it.
It is a staggering way to conceptualize the people in our lives who keep us tethered to the earth when our minds are overclocking.
It takes the abstract, often flimsy concept of a supportive partner or a profound friendship and turns it into hard structural engineering.
Yeah.
It removes the vague sentimentality and says, no, this person is not just a nice addition to your life. This person is a load-bearing pillar in your psychological architecture. If they leave the node, if that connection is severed, the servers will overheat and the building will fall.
It forces us to treat those relationships with the gravity and maintenance they require. You don't ignore the firewall.
No, you do not.
Which brings us to the end of our journey through the analog wasteland. We have covered an incredible amount of terrain today in this deep dive.
We really have.
We've explored the Florida cyber swamp of the mind, realizing that our messy, obsolete memories and rusted traumas are actually structural dampers keeping us upright during emotional earthquakes.
We've tracked the complex evolution of the self. From the overclocked, glitchy youth of V1 Prime to the weary, environment-optimizing adulthood of V2 Admin to the pathologically homeostatic, probability-accepting sage of V3 Root.
We examined the friction of the external network, understanding through the traveler's reality bending and Cassie the Duck's perception filter that others will always misperceive us through the lens of their own past.
And we learned that this misperception is a system feature we must grant grace to, not a bug we must eradicate.
And finally, we discovered the absolute vital importance of the constants, the furry nodes of emotional security and the grounding shield maiden forces in our lives that act as our firewalls, keeping our ports closed to toxic data and providing our uptime guarantees.
It's an incredible system.
So I want to turn this directly to you, the listener. Think about your own internal Foreverglades. Think about your legacy code. Who acts as the structural damper in your life? Where is your personal green dragon node where you can go to securely vent your asynchronous heat and quiet the static of your own mind?
It's worth asking yourself.
Are you allowing yourself to seek out baggage that matches yours, or are you still trapped trying to present a sterile archive to the world?
And as you map out your own system architecture, this raises an important question, a final thought for you to consider.
Yeah.
This entire Clockwork Necronomicon system, from the glitching prime to the grounding firewall, is meticulously documented to handle the known variables of the self. It knows how to handle the @lasingen.py sorting standard daily trauma. But what happens when the architecture inevitably ingests a completely undocumented catastrophic piece of new legacy code? A trauma, or perhaps a joy, so profound, so completely alien, that it defies all established sorting logic. What does the next version of the self, the version beyond the root, look like when the system is forced to evolve past its known limits?
That is something to mull over the next time you find yourself staring at an old cassette tape, a tangled cord, or a rusted sign, wondering why you just can't seem to throw it away. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We wish you high uptime, a stable connection to your own reality, and safe travels through your own psychological muddy waters.